Welcome to the Recruitment Rollercoaster podcast. My name is Hisham Azuz, and today I'm joined by Nick Carman, who is a partnerships director at a recruitment business called Macdonald Company. And Macdonald Company are leaders in real estate recruitment. Nick, thank you for joining me.
I'd say my pleasure, but I'm pretty nervous at the moment, so I'm not quite sure.
You have nothing to be nervous about. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it? We sort of float with the idea for a while.
I suppose I'm a bit of a fanboy. I think what you're doing is brilliant, and I think recruitment is really, really short of internal champions. And so I think what you're doing and what I think it means for people who listen to it, I think is fantastic.
How did you stumble across it, out of interest?
So I'm pretty late to arriving at sort of podcasts. It's within the last sort of 12 months, say, and I suppose I just got a bit bored of listening to streaming music, and I thought, maybe I can see if I can learn something.
That's how I it's the same sort of thing for me, really. That more so on like just stumbling across the recruitment podcast, because I had the podcast that I listened to, like business, mindset, all that sort of stuff. And then I just got bored of one day, and then I was like, recruitment, what can I learn about recruitment?
So I did the same. I just put it into Spotify, recruitment, and there wasn't a lot. There was this young guy with specs that I thought, what's this guy going to know?
Like when I looked at it was like, it was just a lot of old people talking about recruitment. And obviously, as a sort of young 20-year-old, it didn't really resonate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
But no, honestly, absolute pleasure. I think, I know we've sort of been flirting with getting you booked in, so that's definitely my bad. But really looking forward to diving into your long recruitment career, because you've been in the game for a while, haven't you? How long have you been in the recruitment industry?
13, coming up 14 years.
14 years, long old time that.
It doesn't feel like it.
You look young though.
I'm 36.
I don't think you've aged I don't think that it's aged you.
Well, we can run audio, aren't we? We can lie. So yeah.
Did you have hair when you started recruitment?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. In the early days. In my earliest days, we're doing rec to rec, so that's probably where it went.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool. So look, as you know, then where I always like to start, Nick, where I'd love to sort of start this podcast is how did you enter the world of recruitment? Let's start there, and we'll go from there.
So I left uni in 2004 with a philosophy degree, and just no idea what I wanted to do. I'd gone through all the graduate recruitment of going to see finance or law, or I just like an absolute sheep, just followed what all my mates were doing and went along. And every time I failed at the question, why are you here? What do you want to do? And I didn't get it. I didn't understand. I had no concept of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I went back home, and I picked up a first job in the village I worked in as an estate agent.
Wow. And where's home for you?
Near Chester.
Okay, cool.
And I picked up
big houses around there, right? Or was it not nice back then? Or is it now?
Yes,
nice now?
It was all right. I mean, I was on 12 grand, so the idea of a big house to me was a pretty distant sort of prospect. And I was doing that for a few months, and it was comfortable.
Yeah.
It was and my mates at the time thought I had the best job ever, because
it was like office job.
It was an office job, but I was the only one in the office.
Yeah.
So if I needed a haircut back then, if I needed a haircut, I'd shut the office and go. Or if I fancied lunch.
Oh, it was just you in there?
Yeah, it's just me.
Really?
Yeah, it's just me. I mean, I was 21 in a regional estate agency on my own.
What, and they just trusted you straight out the bat after you got the job?
I guess they couldn't find anyone else. So Muggins here, got it.
And how long did you do that for?
About 8 months,
and then
until my mate, who'd gone to school to do graphic design.
Yeah.
He'd put his CV on Monster or something like that, looking for graphic design jobs. And all he got were calls about recruitment saying, oh, this is just like graphic design. It is exactly the same. Come in, have a chat. And he fell for it.
Really?
And he got this job in Manchester with a oil and gas recruiter. And he said, mate, these guys are muppets. They think they're sort of they struck gold with me, but I can't afford the rent. If I get you a job, will you go halves with me on the rent? I was like, yes.
Wow.
Sign me up. And so he got me an interview the next day. I went along to the first stage, and I thought it was amazing. Really? This is what I suppose I'm fascinated about now, is that what people might know about recruitment, or what they might think about they know about recruitment. Because back then I didn't know there was any industry that was like this. And so after that first interview, I went back home and started, sort of got out Google, what is recruitment, and tried to learn a bit about it. And at the time, I thought I was applying for other recruitment jobs, and what had happened was
It's not very clear, is it, when you sort of start that on that journey? It's a bit weird.
I can't remember the name, but there was a green and black rec to rec who'd sort of sent my CV through, looking for all the industries I thought I wanted to go work for. So I was looking to go into marketing recruitment, or finance or legal recruitment. And anyway, I got this call, and this guy from London, I was in Chester, just said, "Oh yeah, we know this market really, really well. Definitely, we got it nailed." And he set me up with like 6 interviews the very next day. Yeah. And I got through to the third interview during that day, and I got a call from the other guy saying, are you free now? If so, you can come in. Our MD's free this afternoon, and he's interested to meet you. So I was like, I'm not enjoying this interview, Lark.
Really?
And I think I'd come out of an interview with Computer Futures, whereby I'd been sat across this table with this guy who just kept thrusting his Rolex in my face. Really? And I think he used the phrase that we're the sort of business that if you're afraid to get your bollocks on the table and say, "Look at this," we're not for you. and I thought, you know what? You're bang on. You are not for me.
That is so good.
And so I sort of called at the rec to rec, and I say, "I'm really sorry, mate, but I'm gonna go with this other one."
Yeah.
But don't worry, because I think they're recruiting. And I thought at the time I was really helping him out and telling the rec to rec that there might be a vacancy. And obviously at the time he must have thought,
idiot.
So whoever that is, I don't know if that guy remembers it or not, but I am really sorry.
And that was what, Macdonald? No.
So
you joined Oscar, right?
Yeah. So to be really I am a massive fan of the I think it's about sort of 18 months I spent with Oscar Associates, but it's shortly after I left, the whole business went through a huge change. Yeah, and it's I think it's now a really, really successful company.
It looks great online.
But that's not the same individuals I was working for. So my story is quite different. But I just want to set the scene.
No, that's fair enough. So what market did you end up in?
So they were an oil and gas, IT, and rec to rec.
Oh, really?
And so the rec to rec lady is called Maggie Epstein, and if you're in Manchester and you want to find, I think she's first rate.
She's class,
and she interviewed me for the business and said, right, I think we're going to get on really well. Would you fancy coming to work for me? Yeah. And again, you do have no idea what rec to rec is. I was like, great, let's do it. Let's do that. And I did. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity those guys gave me. Yeah. But it was Wild West.
Was it? 18 months rec to rec?
18 months of rec to rec.
Really?
And it was not the market that I think I learned the most about. It was the people I worked with and for.
Really?
Because back then it was run by a guy who was an ex-sales trainer. Yeah. So he'd done his hard graft in the 80s. Yeah. And he'd got some really clear views on what sales is, how it's worked. And so my first day, you're given a script, you're given a full folder. So I'm doing this with my hands now. It's probably like about 6 or 7 centimeters deep, this folder of every circumstance that's ever going to come up. You've got a script how to answer it. Wow. And your job was every night was to read a new circumstance, learn it. And then we had every Wednesday and Friday mornings at 8:00 were run through role plays. Yeah. And everyone hold off. No matter how experienced you are, everyone role played, and that was fantastic to learn a bit about the science of recruitment. I think sort of I've probably got slightly different views now, but that instilled in me a huge amount of discipline, I think, and about sort of how to do it. And when we weren't role playing, we played this game in the morning. Have you called Articulate? No. You from this? No. So this is a card game whereby you're given it's 2 people playing it. You've got a card in front of you, and it's got a word on it which you cannot say, but you've got to get the other person to guess what that word is. So you've got to describe it without using that word or 5 other words that are similar to it. And the idea is that you play this game to get your brain in gear in the morning, to get you up and going and ready to start talking to people straight away. Yeah. And these guys had played this game so often and for so long that they'd burnt out all the cards. And the MD now wrote his own cards every day to get people thinking about
Wow.
it, keep it challenging.
Yeah, so like super disciplined, like processes.
But it's also super competitive. I mean, this would get really heated.
Would it?
Really heated. And it was great. You know, it got an amazing energy and buzz to what were my peers were all really early 20s.
Yeah.
You know, when I think back,
Cool
the people I was
environment.
looking up to, our biggest billers were probably 25 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
Earning cash.
What back then I thought they were absolutely minted.
Really?
You know, because they had a new Volkswagen, you know, and or because they had a house, or you know, and so and I learned.
So
I
what
learned
year
a huge
was this
amount.
in?
This is
Sorry.
2004.
2004, right?
Well, 2000. Sorry, we've been 2005 to 2006.
Yeah, cool. So I'd be really keen just to thanks for that. So let's dig into sort of the majority of your career, which is Macdonald Company, right? So you joined Macdonald Company after that, obviously experience, and just to sort of lay it out. Then what's been your sort of career journey within that business? Because I know we were just saying before that, yeah, the typical route, right, is like you join as a consultant, then you become a manager at some point, director, whatever. So you're now a partnerships director.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's just frame it up for people. So initially, yeah, just share that.
So
and then we'll break it
2006.
down.
So I'd done my sort of 12, 18 month stint at Oscars doing rec to rec.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's. I think the good thing was I learned that I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
but in that environment there was bits I didn't like. For example, our terms and conditions were 40%.
40.
40.
Oh wow.
And the game was don't mention terms and conditions, so that hopefully you know someone
When you make a placement.
wouldn't see it, and then we'd just invoice them.
Wow.
And there was lots of fantastic things I learned about urgency.
Yeah.
There was no database. There was
database.
There was no database. So everyone's desk worked on paper CVs and job boards, and your job every morning was to call up the candidates, say, right, you're on a job board. You tell them a horror story about someone being on a job board, and you had to get them off the job board within 30 minutes. Because if they stayed on after 30
They're
minutes,
gonna get called
they
by
were
other
gone.
people,
So the idea was, you know, that whole desk lasted about a week. Yeah. If you hadn't placed that person you spoke to on Monday, by Friday, no good.
Yeah.
Start again.
Yeah.
So there was bits of that I enjoyed and I took away from, but there's other bits that I didn't. So I made the decision, do you know what? If I'm going to do this, I want to make a career out of it. I don't think I can do it here, but there must be other places I can go and learn about. So I was rec to rec, so I spec'd myself out.
Nice.
And I met these alongside a few others. I met these guys called Macdonald Company who were just a bit older than I was. You know, they wore a smarter suit than I did, and you know they told a good story about sort of how people have built careers internally, what they got involved in, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. Yeah.
So you joined them.
I joined them on a Thursday. I flew out to Marbella Thursday afternoon for their company conference for 4 days.
Decent.
And that was my first day. That's when I met everyone in Marbella. And
Did you have one of those horror stories where Monday is like, oh my god, what did I do?
That was all right.
It was all right.
Yeah.
You hear those though, don't
Yeah.
you? Yeah, they're bad.
Yeah.
So okay, cool. So I know you were saying before. So you were saying before. So 10 years you spent like solely billing, fee earner. And then you spent 2 years as a manager. But what? So just to frame it up. So
How did I get there?
Yeah. So what was the? So you've been at Macdonald Company for how many years?
12 years.
12 years. So was it the first 10?
Yeah, roughly speaking. So when I joined in 2006, as my job then was a contract recruiter in Manchester, but doing a London market.
Okay.
And I worked with an established contract biller then, and you know, my job was right to say, you know, copy what he's doing, but apply it to a different market.
Yeah.
I'd never done contract before, but he was a great, you know, he was great. He was a great trainer. Had loads of patience, and I learned a lot from him. And I had 2 years where I thought were exceptionally sort of successful, and I was really proud of it. And then when I didn't win best newcomer, I was furious.
Really?
Yeah, gutted, furious, had a massive sort of chip on my shoulder, saying, "Right, I'm going to prove them wrong."
Yeah.
And yeah, I think in some ways, I think that's a lot of that is what I look back into.
Really?
It sort of motivates me. Yeah.
Okay. So you didn't win that, but you went. So obviously, yeah, you started in contract.
I didn't even get top 5.
Really?
Yeah. So you know, whatever I thought I was doing, those guys didn't agree.
Yeah. Wow. So then So the first 2 years, and then what do you do for the next?
Well, so yeah. So this before your time. So that was then 2008.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get it at the time, but then when you started seeing on the news about banks falling apart, people leaving with their everything, all their stuff in boxes, this sort of economic crisis. I thought, well, that's all right. Lehman Brothers isn't one of my clients, so I'll be cool.
You'll be all right.
And we weren't.
What market did you recruit in?
So this is real estate. I was doing contract work, and that was probably the most unpopular type of recruitment at the time, because contract staff are very, very obvious. Everyone knows your contract. Everyone knows they're paid a premium to be there.
Yeah.
You're not on the same terms as permanent employees.
So they can't. Those costs straight away.
Don't. Yeah, exactly. They don't need to make you redundant. They just say thanks very much. Don't come in on Monday. And so I had, being frank, 3 years of a really cold, miserable winter.
Really?
Of just hardly any activity. So my second year, I'd build 256.
Yeah.
And then those next 3 years, I was billing around about 110 to about 130.
Wow.
And I thought my world had caved in.
Yeah. And that was all contract still?
That was all contract. In many ways, contract, as much as I think it was unpopular, having something happen every month, because some of these guys were still turning in, saved me. If I was the guys doing perm, were then blanking for 2, 3, 4 months at a time.
Wow.
It was really, really hard graft. I remember at the lowest point, I didn't book an interview. No one went for an interview for 16 weeks.
Whoa.
And you think,
oh my God.
what? How do you? Why? What am I doing wrong? And the market's changed a bit. The styles have changed. Back then, our biggest marketing tool was mail shots.
Yeah.
And I still remember it's pinned up in our Manchester office as a reminder to me. But there's the biggest challenge we had then was, what do you name your mail shot? And this was in sort of September, so it'd been about sort of 12 months of the economic crisis. And I thought, I've nailed this. Recruitment freeze begins to thaw, because I'd booked an interview. So I thought, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
I was looking, and it wasn't. I had another 2 years of really, really hard graft.
Really?
Yeah, to come out the other end.
Right, so let's hold here for a second then. I think, again, thinking about people listening and stuff, let's start there then. Like, why didn't you quit? Why did you not quit?
Why didn't I quit? It still feels quite a long time ago. So I think it's
that
quite...
feels like distant.
Yeah, thankfully. Maybe because it's so miserable, you've put it as deep as darkest memories. But I think ultimately... you're in that moment. If someone said it's going to last three years, maybe I might have.
Yeah, but
right now you're just constantly thinking it's just around the corner. I'm one call away. I'm just one call away from getting.
But 16 weeks, no interview. That requires a lot of resilience, because that's typically the barometer of, no, something could drop this month, blah blah blah, and you're not even getting that. Not even getting a sniff.
Yeah, there's nothing. You get people sort of laughing at you, people crying because they've just been made redundant. You're trying to market them. It was really hard graft. But you haven't got that perspective of hindsight that time. You've just got to keep doing, because the business, really fortunate. The business supported everyone. We did make some redundancies, but a real minimum number of redundancies. And everyone said, right, we've got some old players. The owners of our business are older than I am. They've seen previous recessions, and they were really visible in all the offices saying, we've been here before. It's going to be really hard graft, but you just keep doing the basics, and you'll get the way through. And we bought into that. We bought into that. Unfortunately, I just bought my first apartment, and I had quite a bit of debt. So maybe some of that sort of played quite a big part as why I had to do it.
Yeah. So because I guess that's interesting then, and let's bring that to sort of the current times now. There's a lot of people saying obviously there's definitely a recession around the corner and things like that. Like, what, from your own experience there then, and going through that, how do you think that then helps you prepare for what could be a really tough time or challenging time in your market? Do you get what I mean?
So maybe I'm I'm generally an optimist, but I equally at the back of my mind, I know that this could all end tomorrow. I try not to read too much sort of economic press, but they'll tell you we're in the biggest or the longest bull market we have ever had. A recession has to happen soon according to their cycles. And so the best bit of advice I could give to anyone internally or externally is, the things that keep you going are those client relationships.
That was going to be my thing. Yeah.
You've got to think about, right, who knows me really well, who trusts me to do the job properly. And if you haven't got that relationship, you are extremely fragile ground.
Because I think that was going to be my thing, and I had a chap on who was at the live event actually, Tony, and he said that he went through that period as well. And that was something that he said. He was like, look, when the recession happens, there's going to be a lot less people that you can turn around to, but you need to have people that you can turn around to, clients that are willing to give you business, that are willing to help you out. And there, again, it comes to relationships, doesn't it, at the end of the day? Like, what relationships do you have that you can actually count on them and rely on?
It's really easy to think about the relationships with clients and candidates as being quite disposable.
Yeah.
There's lots of them, lots of work to go after. If that one doesn't work out, fair enough, I don't know. But in a market where they're really rare, they're incredibly valuable.
So in hindsight then, so I know you said during that tough period, you was doing the basics, focusing on that, but was you doubling down on relationships, or like, was you naturally doing that, or was it just trying to, one call away, trying to make stuff happen?
No, I was 2 years in, no one knew where I was.
Yeah.
So my job was like sort of trying to steal other people's relationships. It's calling up saying, I know you've worked with the competitor for this long.
Yeah.
I know they might have been sort of, to your son's christening, but I'll try a bit harder.
Really?
And sometimes that works. Sometimes that works.
So first 5 years contract then, and then how long did you do contract for?
So I was doing contract, and that definitely got me through a really dark period. And then an opportunity came up. So I was in the Manchester office doing a London desk.
Yeah.
But in our London office, a female member of staff was going on her first stint of maternity, and she ran the perm division equivalent to what I was doing contract.
And what was that market again?
So this is in real estate. It was doing what's called technical, so it's project managers.
Yeah, okay.
And she was going on mat leave. She had 2 young members of staff, and they said, right, you've got as much experience as anyone else. Would you like to come down, move to London, and then take up the management responsibility? And then when Christine comes back, we'll see where we're at. And it was, in some ways, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity, but it was just awful timing for me. I'd met my girlfriend, who later turned out to be my wife. I'd bought an apartment, and we were pretty settled in the north. So what I thought I was being really clever with, as I said, well, why don't I try and do this part-time? So I'll live in Manchester. I'll go to Manchester 3 days a week, and I'll travel down to London 2 days a week. And let's see how that goes. And I think they probably, because they maybe didn't have anyone better to do it, they said yes. And that's how it's worked now for 8 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. 8 years.
8 years.
And then so you've done perm for 8 years.
So yeah, and I never looked back then. So
really?
So
how was that transition initially? How was there any challenges there?
So learning. So
because a lot of people that I've spoken to, when they hear contract billers, they're like, "Oh, I'd love a 15, like crazy numbers, right?" So like, I want to get into contract, or do you know what I mean? So because you've done the reverse, right? So contract to perm. How did you find that?
I think to anyone listening, there is the rules of engagement for contract and perm are different.
Okay.
Contract is really high urgency.
Yeah.
The reason someone's choosing to hire someone on a contract basis is because they either can't do it on a permanent basis or it's not suitable. So they're in this moment, and that's you've got to get yourself in that moment with these clients and solve it. They
need that resource as quickly as possible.
Really quickly. And so in some days they'll be flexible as to the skill about it.
Yeah.
Permanent is quite different. Permanent, people think is much longer term. When people are choosing to hire people, they see these people being there 5-10 years down the line.
Yeah.
So their expectations are very, very different. So what I'd say is, anyone sat in their desk now, whether you do contract or perm, go sit next to someone who does a different sector to you. So if you're contract, go sit next to someone who does perm. If you're perm, go sit next to someone in contract, because there are lessons that both of you can learn from that. And so there was lots.
What were the lessons that you learned quite early on then?
So because I think my early days working without a database and that really speediness, and then doing contract, I think I always had really urgency. If I found a client who wanted something from me, they got it that day. It didn't matter what time of day it was.
Yeah.
I'd make sure they got that from me, because that was really important to me. And when I moved to a new market doing perm, that was really important that I built on that, because no one knew who I was, and no one had any loyalty towards me. So I had to build that up, and I had to try and build that up really, really quickly. And there's two guys there who were doing it for probably about, maybe they were sort of 6 to 12 months in, so they were still pretty green. So between us, we had to work it out together how we were going to do it.
Really. So your role then at that point, so you was managing these people straight away?
Yeah.
Really? How difficult was that?
That was really difficult.
Never managed anyone before, right?
I'd never managed anyone, hadn't done the desk, and I was only there 2 days a week. So it's probably not a surprise it didn't go very well.
What did you learn though? What did you learn?
What did I learn? Well, we'll go on to it later, but probably not enough, because I've repeated some of those mistakes later on in my life. But what I suppose I did learn is it's really, really difficult. I think now looking
bill and manage.
No, manage.
Just manage, yeah.
The billing thing I think I was reasonably comfortable with. But management is so much harder. And do you know what? Looking back, I bet I was an arse to manage.
Really?
No, to manage. I thought I knew everything.
Oh,
I was stubborn.
Okay, to manage, yeah.
Unless I saw you as being the absolute pinnacle, I thought, what do they know?
Yeah.
I can solve this myself. Yeah. And when people did that to me, I was furious. but I didn't know how to get them round that.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, I said to those guys, do you know what? You do it. Let's all go learn our mistakes sort of separately. You go do what you do.
Yeah.
Forget about the client. You take all that, and I'll go see if I can find it, and let's have a bit of internal competition to see how that goes. Because in many ways, that's what I enjoyed. The competitive bit I've always enjoyed.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think they did, but I enjoyed it.
Really? So just to help me understand, and then we'll dive into a couple of things. So from that moment, then you've always worked the same niche. And it's been perm.
Since that, there's been some as the market has moved. I've had to adapt. But roughly speaking.
So then, how long did you manage those people before you then ended up just going
handing them back?
Yeah, handing them back
for about 9 months.
9 months, really. And then the period, and then what? And then you were then what? Just solely billing?
So what happened is that sort of after 9 months, we were still really struggling. We were struggling to find our feet. The good thing was I think I'd learned a lot about that market by that time, but they needed more time than I had. Yeah. I was there 2 days a week while still sort of studying myself, learning what this was. So what we did is we took my team of 3, including me, and we just plugged it into another team, and we had a more experienced manager, whereby I just became a slightly more experienced consultant under their wing.
More focused on yourself and your own performance.
And then so I was very, very grateful to them to say, right, these guys, your problem now.
Yeah, you can crack on.
Yeah, and I'm sure they were delighted by that as well.
And then how long was you then just focusing on your own billings and?
So I had the same manager then for probably about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So you were just focusing on doing what you do best.
Yeah. I was, then the only challenge I had then was, is where's each fee coming from? And that suited me really, really well. I had loads to learn.
All you had to focus on.
Yeah, that's all I had to focus on. You make it sound a bit easy, but...
No, but yeah. So, okay, it's just for me to understand. Okay, great. So, be interesting to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, we were talking earlier, and I was saying about... So, I know that you went into that role, in that position where someone had already been working and they went on mat leave, you said. So, but as you said, no one knew you. No one had any loyalty to you. So I guess what's been your journey from that period in terms of building up your desk, building up your relationships? How have you approached that? As I said, the business development, these types of things is something that people always talk to me about, that it's difficult, they struggle with. What's been your experience and journey with building client relationships and these types of things? So
I could wax lyrical business development, because I think this is the piece that I enjoy the most.
Really?
And the people dealing with sort of internal people is my biggest challenge, and probably my steepest and incomplete learning curve, whereas business development I feel most comfortable with. And I think it's I was listening to one of your earlier podcasts, and someone said something that really sort of hit home to me, and it's, you've got to love what other people hate doing, haven't you?
Yeah.
You're going to be really successful at something. You can't just do the same as everyone else. And so for me, that's definitely that business development piece. And I think when I'm speaking to people internally, is that the sooner you realise that business development is at the core of everything you do, it will change the way you look at it. As soon as you stop thinking that you can, business development is a piece of what I do, and so I will put it into my weekly plan and between these hours, and not think about it until those hours, you're always going to struggle, because you're always going to find it really difficult. You're going to find it so challenging to change from candidate care to suddenly attracting new clients.
So how did you integrate it then? How did you integrate it to your week then for it to not feel like that?
So the way in which I think it becomes then a part of every action you do in recruitment. So every time if you're on the phone to a candidate, you're not just qualifying that candidate for the job they might be most suitable about. You're asking the questions about what else might they be, what do they know, who do they work with, who have they worked with before, what can they help you out. Being really frank and honest with them, saying what you want to get out from it, I've always found really, really valuable. You're being honest with them about saying, this is something I don't know about, can you help me out with it? Or this is what I want to, this is who I want to go work with, can you help me out with it? Has been really valuable. But then also with doing not only sort of the candidates, but even when you think you're winning at business development, you've just got a job. If your focus then suddenly turns off from I've got a job, I'm going to fill that job, you're into this sort of stop-start cycle. So the way in which I think to look at it is by accepting that business development is something you have to do every second of the day. You start thinking about, right, this job now, what doors does that unlock for me that might else be there? And suddenly then you get a job, and then you start thinking, right, well, where else can I get that next job from? How do I make sure that the 5 candidates I put forward to that job, how do I find out that I can then put those 5 candidates to 5 jobs? Because then I've got 5 placements, not just 1 and 4 wasted candidates.
That's really resonated with me, actually, because I think if I think about when I was in recruitment, you're so right. You can also, it also allows you to build up unnecessary pressure as well when you're because what we did was we did our business development 10 till 12 every Tuesday and Thursday, whatever. Yeah. You're totally right. That's really resonated with me.
So 11:59, you're thinking, right, I've got to get my business development suit on now, put my tin hat on, and I'm going to march into someone and say, right, I'm Hisham, this is what I'm doing best. You've got your features and benefits written down, you're telling them all about why you're amazing, and someone shuts the door on you. And suddenly you think, well, I've failed. Yeah. And do you know what? If you do it every day, every minute of the day, every action you're taking, and it's part of it, you will accelerate. You'll get better. You'll get better at that. But more importantly, you'll be far more successful at it.
Yeah. No, I think that it sounds really simple and basic, but that really is a really acute mindset change. That no, we don't do just business development between this period. It's every having that mindset, isn't it? Because you do go into. I definitely 100% going in when you're at the candidate stuff. That becomes very comfortable very quickly when you're happy to have those conversations. And yeah, you're totally right. So how has that impacted your performance then? So has that enabled you then to expand accounts, make more out of just potentially that someone could have just gone, yeah, thank you for that job, bomb, done. I can make that placement now. How have you found having that mindset change? Which definitely I feel like that could unlock a lot of things for people. How has that impacted?
So I suppose the biggest change is that it's meant that I think I've been more agile in the markets I've worked. So by having it as part of my sort of every part of the day, I think I've been able to pick up on what's movements or what changed in the market much quicker. And so winding back to those days when I had to first move those desks and learn the market, the guys who I was working with, the 2 guys, I said, well, right, we've got an established client list. You guys split that 50-50. Because I thought maybe that'll make them like me more. If I say I'm not going to take anything off you, you have everything there that we've taken 3 people's client lists and just turn it into 2, I'll go try and find something else. Yeah. And that helped me realise really quickly that actually their client list was dog shit. And actually there was an area that we didn't realise or didn't work at all, and it was there to be taken. By the thing I think that I still do today that is probably one of my best tactics is, once I've got a job on, I don't go start looking for candidates. The first thing I do is I'll then ring 10 clients and say, I've got this job on. This is the skills. This is who it's with, and this is what it's paying. Who would you recommend for it? And in that afternoon, when I call these 10 clients, by the end of it, not only will I have their recommendations for who the very best people are on the market to do that, but I've also told them what I'm doing in the market I'm a specialist in. That's often, if I've picked them really well, they're competitors. And so these guys are thinking, oh, I need that.
That's smart. Simple.
Really simple.
But you again, I'm thinking, if you call 10 clients, particularly if it's a role which businesses are always at some point looking for during their business journey or whatever. Because again, if I think of my insurance days, the particular job title, if you had, you always hear that in recruitment, like if you had 10 of that, I've had 10. In my day, it was commercial account handler. If you had 10 commercial account handlers,
and more often not, 2 or 3 of those guys will say jovially, if only I knew someone like that. And you're like, brilliant. Well, I know who to call. Use my next call.
Yeah.
I find one person for it.
Exactly.
And that's how that sort of that the way in which I've sort of tried to focus around sort of efficiencies is that then I've got my client who's looking for this. I work hard. I deliver those 5 candidates, but I take those 5 candidates then to the next 2, 3, or sometimes I might send them to all 10 and just saying, I have interest. Do you mind having a quick look over these guys and see if I'm on the right track?
Simple, but I really like that.
So really quickly.
And have you always sourced for your jobs then?
As in, do I do it all myself?
Like how's that been? Or clearly you're someone that's really comfortable with the business development, good at it. Like, have you always done it yourself, or have you had support? How's that been?
Well, it's probably changed over time.
Has it?
So I still probably even now I probably self-deliver quite a high proportion of the work I win. Okay. In many ways, it's because I can do it pretty quickly using that same process.
Really,
but inevitably, the more work you win, the less time you've got to deliver it. So yeah, there's lots of great people I work with who are fantastic.
Yeah, because like what's been your experience in juggling that then? Because clearly, you've got some great tactics around that, some great practical advice. And then have you always been someone that's been able to find these candidates and quite? Do you know what I mean?
I think. The short answer is yes, because it's not because I've got any sort of special tricks. It's because if I've told someone I'll go and do it, I've got to do it.
Yeah,
if I make one bad promise, I can't call them again.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, do I find it easy? No, of course not. And sometimes I get myself really stuck where I've promised someone that I'm going to do it, and I ring 10 people, and everyone goes, they don't exist. Yeah. And then I'm a bit stuck.
So but so then okay, cool. So in terms of, I think that's such practical advice. I absolutely love that. I hope a lot of people can get sort of real value from that. What's in the sort of whole perm journey then? What's been the sort of performance? Because obviously what you shared with me, we always dive into figures and stuff. How have you done billings wise? And how has that been over the last 4-8 years?
So last year I billed 475 and I managed a team of 4 people.
And that's perm?
That's perm.
That's no joke, that. Good figures.
Yeah.
Really good. I just feel like, I don't know, there's a big part of me that I feel like big part of that is definitely really nailing that client piece and having that mindset that you were talking about. So how long have you managed that team for?
So I managed that in my second incarnation of management. I thought after the first time I gave it back for sort of 3 or 4 years, and I thought, and then I took it back. Not being really brutally honest, not because I wanted to manage people, but because I'd spent sort of what it must have been 8 years at the same company, and I was the top biller in the UK at that time, but I wasn't allowed in the management meetings because I wasn't a manager, and that used to really grate on me that there were decisions being made that I couldn't get involved in, and I really wanted to, and so when I raised it, they said, well, you're not a manager. I was like, right. How hard can it be? And I just forgot everything that all the struggles I had previously, and thought, yeah, let's do it. And so I spun out of that established team, and I just took my desk and then at that time split it into 3. And we recruited 2 people.
Really?
That was 2 years ago.
So what's been your best year then? If you've been top, what's been your best year?
I've been at this so long. I almost. I won't answer that because it's almost irrelevant in the sense of I hear loads of people who've come up with some massive numbers, but it was like in the 2000s, and your listeners probably don't care about that, do they?
No, I know. The only reason why is, so firstly, doing that last year with a team, I think that is amazing. I think, again...
It didn't come without sacrifices.
Of course. What in terms of...
Probably management. So
your bill, so what your billing's dropped a bit.
So the 2 years. So that first year, I remember really thinking that, right, well, I've gone. Now I think internally I've got a sort of I've got a certain reputation then for what I can do, and I was like, my first year in management, I also want to succeed at.
Yeah.
Because suddenly although I'd gone from being this biggest biller to being in the management team, but suddenly I was the smallest team. So I'd gone from like sort of big fish to little fish overnight by somehow asking for it. And I just didn't sit very well with me. I felt I didn't like it. So I thought, well, right, okay, well, I'm going to show these guys how I do it. So we brought in 2 people. And I had the strategy was, I'm still only doing it part-time. I'm still in the London office 2 days a week. And so I couldn't take on 2 completely fresh grads. So we took 2 people with some life experience, but a minimum amount of recruitment experience.
Yeah.
And I thought, do you know what, first time recruitment didn't go very well. So maybe because I was too competitive, maybe I asked too much of them.
What, being a manager?
Yeah. So I'm going to be really generous. And so I took my desk, and I said, right, if you do 1 deal, I'll give you an account.
Okay.
And so, roughly speaking, I think sort of you operate with about 10 clients at any one time.
Yeah.
And so each deal they did, then I gave them 1. And during that 12 months, I was just constantly conflicted. I was just never happy. And
what was you conflicted with?
Well, because what happened is that these things I'd worked really, really hard to achieve and build up these relationships.
Found it hard to let go.
Yeah, well, not so much that, because I think I in my mind I thought I'm going to want these guys to like me, and if I give them this, they're going to like me. But actually, because whenever inevitably, and there's no criticism of those guys, but when you're given something, you never treat it the same way as when you've had to earn
definitely.
it.
I couldn't agree more.
And these guys are probably asking way too much of them as well, because these are quite complex relationships and areas to manage, and they didn't do it as well as I thought I might have done. But you've got to make the mistakes, haven't you? If I kept dipping in and pointing out where I thought they were going wrong, we're going to really grate on each other. But I was conflicted because there were things that I wanted to go and do that I couldn't, because it was at the expense of spending time with those guys. And I thought, I'm only here 2 days a week, so I can't. I've got to give them those 2 full days. Otherwise, it's just not fair. And so what happened in that first sort of 12 months was that I spent my time when I was FaceTime with them, managing them and giving them everything I could to try and make them as good as they could be.
Yeah.
And then the other 3 days a week when I wasn't with them, I tried to fit in a 5-day billing week, and it meant that I'd work my weekends and my evenings, and it was really hard graft. And at the end of it, what happened was that I billed 250k, and at the end of the year we had this massive sort of party, because that team then had won 5 out of the 6 awards of our internal awards. It won biggest biller, best newcomer, best deal.
And that was your team?
Yeah, that was my team. I forget what it was. And the one we came second in was sort of highest revenue per head. So we had on paper, we had a great year. Management was, they were really supportive. But I felt really disappointed because there was things I left on the table that I really wanted to go and achieve in that year. And so the next year I thought, well, okay, fine. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on management. I don't want people to think I've failed at this. So what I maybe need to do, I maybe just need to recruit a few more people, and we need to build a bit more of a steady nucleus in this team. Yeah. And then they can be sort of there's ideas they can bounce off each other as well, and they can then sort of learn collectively. But actually, that didn't work very well at all. It's probably people listening thinking you idiot. And it meant there was just more management time. And so the only way I found to balance that was that I became a lot more selfish of my time. When
you was on your free days?
Yeah. So I couldn't spend any more time doing my personal billing. So it meant I ate into their management time, and I did more of what I did, and so the good thing was that returned me back then to my billing habits and what I enjoyed, but it was at the expense then of how that team developed, no doubt.
Really?
Yeah.
So would you go, if you were to start that process again, and how would you do it differently? If you were to start that first year again, you wanted to get into those management meetings, How do you approach it differently?
I probably maybe
Clearly still working it out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think isn't everyone.
Yeah.
I probably would have been a bit more forceful with the leadership, saying that just don't call it a management team then.
Yeah.
Now,
in terms of like getting involved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I think I've got something to add, but I'm not, because I'm a sort of a successful biller. Don't block that door because I haven't got a management badge.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not something I've thought about too much.
That's interesting, though.
But that's probably what I.
Because there'll definitely be a lot of people that may feel like that.
Yeah. So the long story short is, so at the end of that 2 years, this is going back. Then what happened was I recruited 2 people, so 2 great managers, previous management experience. One person had run a business, the other person had run some really big teams, and I gave them the team, and those guys now run it as co-heads.
Interesting. Management's hard, isn't it?
It's so much harder than I ever thought. And do you know, if people are listening to this and they've continued to listen to it, the one thing I would really recommend is that just management is so difficult, and if you haven't done it before, you maybe just don't appreciate how hard these people work. So just just find something they're really good at and just tell them and just give them a bit of praise and say thank you. They will really, really appreciate that, because it's dark and it's lonely and it's miserable.
So look, what I'd really like to sort of dive into, I know you shared some of these things, but I think honestly, if I think of the conversations I have on a daily, weekly basis with people around performance and things like that, I don't want to be really hung up on the billings, but I think it's just part of it is a good indicator. But I have weekly conversations with people. Hisham, I'm really struggling to break the 200k mark. And progressing, do you get what I mean? Some people can really plateau. So like, how have you always pushed forward? Clearly you're someone that's super competitive, willing to put in the work, clearly. But like, what do you think are some of the things that really contributed? Because that honestly, again, I think that's like really impressive. Like, there may be a lot of people thinking that how can you do those sort of numbers in today's market? I think back to sort of when I shared what are the sort of typical good billings in today's market. People had different opinions, but if you're someone that's billing 200k plus, like, you're seen as a really good biller.
Yeah,
so like for people to listen,
250 definitely.
That's what I mean. For people to listen and for you to go, yeah, I did 400 something last month. That in perm, that is, do you know what I mean? So like, I guess I'd love to just sort of, if there's anything else in there, like what you think is really enable you to do that and achieve that, because there'll be a lot of people think that it's just so out of their planet. Do you know what I mean? And if I was listening, I'd be like, how has he done that? Do you know what I mean?
The thing to remember is when we might have a conversation with someone about sort of, right, I've hit my pinnacle.
Yeah.
And if it's not as high as maybe where I was billing, as soon as we start having a chat, most people sort of forget about the basics and just covering their bases, because you get a bit comfortable or you get a routine and maybe over time you've adapted it to suit who you are.
Yeah.
But actually revisiting some of the basics about sort of how you might sort of manage your candidates, how you might manage those clients, how you sort of perfect the processes that go through, and crucially that you never forget that business development is a part of every part of the job you do. You'll start then to see that there are gaps that you can really tweak, and that's all we're talking about. It's minor tweaks that will make
a big
impact. But the other thing is, I'm the same. When I'd hit sort of barriers of say 250 or 300 or sort of 350, and more often than what was happening was that I was approaching closer and closer to sort of the sort of pinnacles of the people who I saw were my peers.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if they're doing 275, if I'm doing 250, I'm doing all right, because 275 is the ceiling. And then someone would come along and do 300, and I'm like,
so
how they do that?
Yeah, it feels attainable.
Suddenly your whole perspective changes about what you can do, and that's. So if you're in an organisation,
has that had a big impact?
It has massive impact, even and to this day now. So at my peak, I spent 3 years as UK top biller and 2 years as global top biller. But now I wouldn't make it. We've got £1 million billers now, and I think how do you do that?
Yeah.
And so learning, sort of constantly thinking that actually what I'm doing, people find more time in the day to do more. I think that is, so if you're in an organization now whereby if you have you've reached this sort of plateau and you think you're maxed out, and if you are the biggest biller and you're at 200 or 225, you're doing a really good job, but there is definitely things you can do to increase it. And so if there's not someone in your business who you can chase after, go and find it. Speak to you. Go to some of these recruitment network style events. Find someone who's doing it.
It's amazing how much of an impact that has. Like, because all of a sudden it's like, Nick, this is real. No, there's more. You could do more.
Do you know what? And I think there's a bit more to that. I think it's a lot more enjoyable. The years where when I was chasing other people were much more enjoyable than when I was in that top seat. Because and I've used an analogy load, and I should say I'm not a cyclist. I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but like they call a group of cyclists a peloton, don't they?
Yeah.
There's always someone at the first space, and everyone else is drafting behind them. So they're in this pack just behind them. Being in that pack, constantly having someone to focus on and chase after, is so much easier than when you're out the front. Because when I was out the front, it's really lonely. And mentally, it's incredibly draining, having this massive fear. What if I drop?
Yeah.
What if
you have that massive expectation on yourself?
And I don't know if I'm unique or not, but about expectation. When I was number one, I put so much value on that. That was my reputation. That's what I thought people thought about me. That I thought, what if I'm not? What am I? Suddenly, what? And so, yeah. I felt a tremendous amount of pressure and a tremendous amount of how lonely and how, in some ways how miserable sometimes the job got, because I just had to do more every month. I had to do more, otherwise someone's going to catch me.
Hard at the top, isn't it?
I'm sure no one's getting violins out, are they? But,
no, but I think it's a great way to talk about it, because
I had to go find help, definitely.
What do you mean?
Because I didn't think it was sustainable. I didn't think it was very healthy.
Really?
So
what was being impacted then? Were your personal relationships being impacted?
Yeah, everything. Yeah, I'd be grumpy. I'd be.
So what did you get help with? Mindset.
It's all the stuff that I never had before, about this fear of what was someone else going to do. If I did 30k in the month, what if someone did 31? Even when I was I never ever so when I was at that top, I stopped celebrating all the wins because I was worried there weren't going to be enough.
Wow. How did you start getting over that then? What did you get help with? Is it mental?
Yeah. So I went to work and I said, right, this is the problem I've got. I need someone who I can either go and chase or find something to get me out of this. And they were great. At the drop of a hat, they said, well, let's go find you a coach. And so we went externally and we found someone who I then sort of spent some time talking it all through.
And what did they help? How did that help?
Do you mind in some ways just having a chat to someone who wasn't who I didn't feel like vulnerable with?
Yeah,
because
they were like completely neutral.
Yeah. I put a huge amount of responsibility on myself because of where I wanted people to think who I was. So I didn't dare admit that I wasn't that, or that I wasn't invincible. So having someone who I could chat that through, and being frank, the guy was fantastic, but he didn't have any magic dust to pour over this stuff.
Yeah.
But he was someone who listened to what I've got and gave me a bit of sort of pretty sort of simple advice, and you go away and you implement it, and off it goes again.
So if someone's sort of feeling,
and I got the love back, I think.
Really. If someone's sort of feeling those things and experiencing some of those things that maybe you experienced, then what are some of the things that you'd sort of tell them to start thinking about?
So I think it's you've got to get back in that mindset whereby you're chasing something.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're trying to
having a goal.
and that's the most important word, is that I think targets work for businesses, but goals work for people.
Yeah, not just your revenue goal, like your own personal goal.
Definitely. So every year now, I say now, I've done this ever since I've started. Is I'll write a wish list.
Yeah.
Something, and it's material stuff. It's something I want to buy or something I want to go and learn and do at the start of each year, and I just put a little target next to it. And it's often a financial target, or it's a bit beat this record or something like that.
Yeah.
And then every time I do it, I'll go treat myself with that.
Yeah.
And so that at the end of the year, if I don't hit this sort of notional target that someone else might have dreamed up for me, or maybe I've dreamed
Yeah.
up for me, I still know I've had a good year because I've ticked off 8 of those things at the start of the year, which I thought were aspirational.
So then was part of that process actually making the time to give yourself a pat on the back and celebrate some of the things you've worked hard for and get better at that?
Yeah, definitely. Because if you even the small stuff, if you don't celebrate it, then you overlook it really quickly. And our mind's a wonderful thing, but you forget about all those small wins if you think your whole year rests on hitting one target.
It's really interesting.
It's taken me it's taken me quite a long time to learn.
And that's really helped you again. It's really interesting, isn't it? I think that's such a great story. So I think thank you for being so open and honest, because I think like so many people, a lot of people who are listening and in recruitment will want to get to that top spot, but how many people then at the top talk about how actually they may not like you're saying, like why would you then share with people like, oh, I'm actually finding it really hard at the top because all the things that you're sharing, do you know what I mean? How many people then actually talk about when they get to the top that, yeah, this is actually really hard, I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself, all these things. So I think that's really interesting. Out of interest then, what are some of the things now, again, you're sort of having this exposure to people that you're chasing and inspire you, like what are some of the things you're seeing in these people that leave you sort of, so the people that are performing even better in these types of things, like what are some of the things that you're picking up from these people that maybe you've implemented or seen or found interesting? Anything there?
Yeah, so sort of like what lessons do you think I've
well,
learned?
just because again, now as you said, you're not in this top spot now, and there's people, and you quite like that because now you can look at people, wow, they're achieving this, blah blah blah. But I don't know, is there anything that you've picked up on? It could be anyone. It doesn't always have to be because they make billing more than you. But is there anything that you've picked up on over the last couple of years that have left you sort of inspired and you've then utilised yourself? Or
do you know what? And this might come as really disappointing news. There isn't something that these guys are doing that is revolutionary different to what anyone does.
I think that's great to hear, though.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I find it inspiring to think that it's not because someone's landed a great big account or they've been given something or they do something that I haven't got. It's down to relationships, and it's down to subtle sort of changes in how you think about something. So coming back to my big point about business development is part of everything we do, is that so often people will think that a client is sort of winning work is about getting a job on.
Yeah.
And they keep going back to that same person in that organization back and forth and thinking that, right, because they give me regular jobs, I've nailed that client.
Yeah.
And actually what you don't realize is that organization is made up of tens, hundreds, thousands of people doing exactly the same with lots of other recruiters. And if you can find a way then to take that success story in one fraction of that business and start to multiply it, that's what I think where it gets really successful, because suddenly you're not having to start from scratch every time.
Yeah.
You've got someone internally who's willing to say, this guy is great. And actually, we all love doing that. If we've had great service, we love telling our friends about it because they'll thank us for it. Yeah. It's actually quite natural to be to want to be able to help our colleagues out. But as the recruiter, you've got to channel that and you've got to make that work.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great point. I think the episode with James, he spoke a lot about this, how for him, once he's made the first placement, that's when the fun starts for him. That isn't where it ends. So I think that's great that you're sort of sharing it from your own perspective and sort of what you've picked up on. I guess, what does a typical day look like for you? I feel like it would be regimented. What do you make sure? What are non-negotiables in your day? I'm sure people would love to know what that looks like. What does a typical day look like for you on your billing days?
Yeah, so my billing, officially my last billing day was the 31st of March last year.
Okay.
But then and now I'm not a big planner.
Really? I feel like you would have been.
Yeah, I'm not great at planning.
Really?
Because what I do know is that if I think about something, if I want to go do it, I've got to do it straight away.
Yeah.
Because I'll either forget about it or inevitably, you'll think, oh, I need to call that client. And if I forget about it, guarantee I call them the next day and they're like, "Oh, if only you'd call me yesterday, Nick."
Yeah.
Something happened. So yeah, so what I tend to do is, I think I try and with a high degree of urgency, I just get as much done in the day as I can.
Yeah.
But what I do have is I have a golden rule whereby there's always one thing I have to do that day, and I'll do that first.
Yeah.
Get it out of the way, because sometimes
is that typically like the hardest, not perceived hardest?
Yeah, sometimes it's the stuff you're really not looking forward to do.
Yeah.
Just get it out of the way, and then everything, and the rest of the day is downhill. Then.
Yeah. So, recruitment must have changed a lot since you've been in the game. What do you think has been the biggest changes?
So I've worked in really small setups and now quite a big company.
Yeah.
There's aspects of recruitment that haven't changed at all.
Yeah.
And things like tech, LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, sort of started, after I'd started in recruitment. So LinkedIn's definitely had a major impact, and it's probably hurt big businesses and helped very small businesses, because suddenly then it's a real leveling factor. Everyone's got the same database.
Yeah, that's fair.
And increasingly so, I think I'm now learning about content and ways in which to sort of to reach your marketplace. So I think probably the recruiter now has to be a lot more agile and has to be far more open to different ways of working. I think I'm a process recruiter. I think I've got these set rules and way in which I work. For each, whether I'm working with a candidate or a client.
Yeah.
That's I'll follow that process and I'll make sure I nail that. But I'm trying to improve my understanding on some of the softer stuff.
Yeah, and how easy are you finding that? Because I think, again, typically someone in your shoes who've been in recruitment for a while, you've got those tools. Why would, I know how it works. Like, I'm going to carry on doing what I do, no works. Do you know what I mean? Where's the motivation behind that, out of interest? Because I think, again, that's great to have that mindset, but there may be a lot of people listening who, why would I know what I need to do?
I think it's...
And how have you found it? How have you found going through that journey?
But I think that's what I enjoy.
Yeah.
You and I had a quick chat, didn't we, about before, and you asked me what I don't like. And if I hear you or someone on your podcast and they say, when they're trying to make out like recruitment's easy or the process is easy,
it's not rocket science.
Yeah, and I hate that.
Yeah. Why do you hate that?
Well, because I don't want someone to sort of belittle my chosen career. I don't want someone to tell me my job's easy, because I find it really hard.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And there's
but I think it's the actual process of. Do you know what I mean? That's what people say though when they say that.
But how much do you bill in your first year?
24K, mate.
So how easy is recruitment? How easy is the process?
No, I get what you mean. I totally get what you mean. I think, but that's why people say that though. Do you know what I mean? That's why people say it's like, well, look, the process doesn't change, but it does. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So when you asked me sort of how am I finding it, and I think that's what I'm finding it is that's what gives me the enjoyment. I don't believe, although I've been I've had this I've been a recruitment consultant for 13 years. I don't believe for a second that I've been doing the same job. I think every year it changes, and every year I've got to learn something different. So whether it's about sort of the psychology of an interview, or whether it's digital marketing, or whether it's something within my market, if I don't keep on top of that, I'll become a dinosaur. I'll die out.
So how do you see the next 5-10 years planning out? How are you thinking about that in terms of recruitment wise?
I'm pretty comfortable about that.
Really?
I am. I really am, because the tech, I think, is an enabler
For sure.
I don't believe for a second it could replace what I think really good recruiters are best known for. And so I think how much will it change in the next sort of 5-10 years? I'm not sure. I think the people who either have really low sort of engagement with their clients, who are these sort of CV farms, they probably need to be pretty worried.
Yeah.
But the people who are spending the time to get to know those clients, build up really, really strong relationships, will find that tech enables them to handle the really low value work and give them more time to do what they're really good at.
Yeah.
So I think it can only get better.
Have you always viewed recruitment as your career?
I love recruitment.
Yeah.
And it's probably
it's
probably taken me quite a long time to admit that.
Really?
Yeah.
So because of what comes with calling yourself a recruiter.
Yeah, so I call myself a recruitment consultant.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that for quite a few years. I'd call myself a headhunter or a talent
Well,
management specialist.
Because of the perception.
Because what I thought was the perception.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I didn't think it was cool, or I didn't think it was
well respected,
attractive, or maybe I didn't think it was respected, or maybe I didn't think it was a career.
Do you think that's changing?
There's only one way it's going to change, is if recruitment consultants change it. We can't expect other people to award us, a professional badge or accreditation if we're embarrassed about saying what we do.
Yeah, you're so right.
So I think this is why I said at the start. I think you are doing an amazing job being this champion for so many people, and bringing out these stories about people who are really successful at what they do.
Yeah,
because we should be really proud of it. And now looking back, obviously it wasn't a strategy or a plan to get into recruitment, but I'm incredibly grateful for it. It's given me so much,
yeah.
and the great thing is it still does. I've got so much to learn and so much I'm really excited about developing.
Yeah.
That I don't know any other job that could do that.
So 2020.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you, mate?
So I've got this new job, haven't I? So since 1st of April, my title changed from director to partnership director.
What does that mean?
So there was something that over the past sort of 2 or 3 years that I've been sort of perfecting, and it's about sort of taking the traditional sort of contingency model and then having a quick look in terms of how we apply that. And we've badged it up internally as partnership.
Okay.
And what we do is we'll go to a client and say, right, we're doing, look at our numbers in this department. Listen to that line manager. Why can't we apply this to every department you've got?
Okay.
And we build up a partnership.
Yeah.
And without boring you too much, essentially the way it works is we're still charging on a fee per hire basis. But what we will do is, if you instruct us, you're asking us to spend X amount of hours on it.
Yeah.
So there'll be a bill. It doesn't matter if you hire your next door neighbour or the guy sat in the seat to the left of it already, but if you're asking us to provide our services, then there's a fee to be paid.
How's that been going down?
Like anything, there's lots of people who are used to recruitment in its own ways. Yeah. So there's lots of people
interacting it and having a certain exchange, and
there's lots of people who are very comfortable burning through recruiters' time for free.
Yeah.
So to those guys, no, it doesn't go down very well, because suddenly to them they think it's going to be really expensive because they manage recruiters' time really badly. But there's lots and lots of clients who've seen the benefit to it, and the great thing for me is it gives us having that sort of certainty of billable hours.
Yeah.
Means we can do so much more for them. And I think we've now got a really solid core
you just
of clients
build so you do it. Yeah, you then obviously showcase on a monthly basis like what you've done.
It means we do these wonderful things through statistics about sort of their process, from how many CVs did we provide, how many people they showed. We can then show them the feedback in these beautiful sort of tables, and this is what the market thinks of you when we've gone out to them originally. To this is what they think about you when they've been inside. This is the time that you've spent to make decisions. We probably need to make some tweaks here as well. Through to once. Our closest relationships are I'll see them once a month, and for some of them I'm sat on the board as a nominal position and giving them updates on recruitment and HR, and those are our most successful relationships.
Yeah, because seen as a partner.
Yeah, and it's
a both-way relationship,
genuine.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
that's awesome, and that's been a process and journey since April.
No, so that's been about 3 years in the making.
Oh, okay.
That's been the thing that I've been sort of most passionate about. But then having, that admitted some, the things that I wasn't enjoying about management, and then finding these two guys who can then co-head the team I set up, has then meant I've got a lot more time to do it. And the other good thing is there was a big career milestone for me that I wanted to go from. I'd been this consultant, I'd got that management in that management team, but I was never on the board. And so the 1st of April, then I got my board seat.
How'd that feel?
That was phenomenal.
Really?
That was because it was just something I really, really wanted. And there's something about you. I think you asked me about sort of how do people sort of get on, and how do they develop?
Yeah.
And I think you've got to be really proactive. You've got to ask for it.
Yeah.
I asked for that 2 years ago, and to the chief exec, and I'm not, I don't know whether he was being polite or not, but he said, let's have a chat about it. And there's no doubt I was not ready for that in the slightest. But because I put my hat in the ring, I'd sort of marked out my seat there for the future, and we agreed on what I needed to go do and learn about before I was eligible to join it. After that period of time, then we got. And the great thing personally is that I'm now sat in an organisation that I feel really passionate about, alongside people who used to be my managers, who used to be the people who I looked up to when I first sort of started. But now, we're now sat at the same table, making some really bold decisions, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. I think because a lot of people can really fall into the trap of like, they're just like pointing the finger basically and be like, they're not giving me any opportunity. Like, no, I don't like them. It's not fair. Blah blah blah. But as you quite already said, I think in my experience when I've worked for businesses and stuff, it's like, ask, put your hat in the ring, and then if you do get pushed back, it's like, right, okay, what have I got to do to get to a point where I can get to where I want to? So I think that's such great advice for those that are wanting to push on and have more of an impact in the business that they've given a lot of time to. It's like, let them know that's what you want, instead of sitting there and moaning when you get home, they're not giving me that opportunity, blah blah blah, right? Cool. So last question. It's gone quick, isn't that? So normally I ask sort of what you're excited about and stuff, but I think you sort of give a great just shared with us sort of what's exciting, I think, there. So look, what the last question I always ask is simple, and that's if you could communicate to every single recruiter out there, they'd listen to your advice, they'd take it on, they'd implement it tomorrow. Could be a phrase, a sentence. What comes to mind? What do you want to tell the people?
Okay, so it probably comes back to sort of business development, and that one word is proximity.
Okay.
So no matter what type of recruiter you think you are, whether you're like me being process, or whether you're more Hisham about sort of social content and things, what you have to think about is even your best and closest client relationships, they will still succumb to competition if you're not close enough to them. So the idea here is that you have to make sure you are in closest proximity to your clients at any one time. And the challenge is how you do that. This sort of route one is a CV, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just reminding your clients, this is what I do, this is what I've got to offer. But that gets old really, really quickly. And then you've got my trick about ringing them for advice about jobs. Yeah. But then you've got things like industry events. Not only sort of turning up, but maybe you float them the cost of a ticket because you really want them to be involved. I'm in real estate, so every month we go out to go see a client's new building, and we ask them to volunteer their time for an hour, and we'll take 10 or 12 people with us to go learn about what they do. And we don't even mention recruitment. We're interested in what they're doing and how it works, but that's 12 one-hour slots every year that we get to spend with these guys one-on-one learning about it. And then there's lots of other sort of ways we can be really clever about getting in time with that clients. But that's the key is about if you're thinking about building your desk or improving or kicking on, then I think you've got to find really clever ways to be as close to your market, as close to your clients as possible. And if you're not, you're leaving the door wide open for someone who's more eager, who's willing to put in a bit harder graft than you are.
Nick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, mate.
I enjoyed that more than I thought.